welcome to this afternoon's session. I'll hand over to Justin, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to say a very warm welcome to Hans Matheson, who has very kindly agreed to come and talk to us all about his process, his experience, and hopefully offer us a few pearls of advice and otherwise. And please do feel free to ask questions. What we used to do in the old days is have questions at the end, but I think it's a bit formal. So I'd much rather if something occurs to you, if you've got a thought, because sometimes people forget what they want to say, just put your hand up and I'll come to you as soon as I can. Because it might be relevant to the discussion we're having. So thanks very much, Hans, for coming to join us, and welcome to the Met Film School. What I would love to do is to start where we always start, which I guess is the sort of origin story, breaking in, all that kind of stuff. So if you could just give a little bit of an idea of where you came from, family background, and I guess how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of sort of luck involved, really. I wasn't doing very well at school, and my mum was very into astrology and stuff like that, and felt that my being a Leo with Scorpio ascendant, that I'd be very good in the arts.
Right.
So, yeah, I was about 15, 16, not really going anywhere, doing anything, and she said, I want you to go for drama college. And I was so shy. I thought, this is a ridiculous idea, but I had been involved in school plays when I was much younger.
Right.
And I do remember moments of feeling, this is really interesting. I didn't really know why, but I had an instinct towards performance. Anyway.
She could possibly be the only parent in history that actually suggested an acting career for their children.
Absolutely.
Usually they're trying to talk them out of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, it's so true. But anyway, I auditioned for drama college, but I have to say that it was an awful audition. I would never, they had a shortage of boys, and that's the truth. And somehow I got in, but it was absolutely the right place for me. I was the only boy in the class. I was so shy, didn't know what was going on. But I just, through the training, through the teachers, I just started to learn about the craft, and I was really humble and just got on with the job at hand, and I slowly just fell in love with it. And from drama college, I met Jez Butterworth. Do you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of Jez Butterworth. But he was at the same stage as me, just trying to break through, and we did this little film together. I got an agent, and suddenly, things worked out for me. I'm not saying everything has been easy, because it hasn't, really hasn't. But how it began was incredible. I never really expected to become an actor, even though I was training to be one. It was just.
So what would you have done had you not? I mean, was there an idea? Did you have an idea?
My dad was an antique restorer, and I was sort of learning that trade.
Right.
But I wasn't very good at it, and I was good at music, and I always remember when I was very young listening to Kate Bush singing "Wuthering Heights," and I was so I couldn't get over the fact that he wouldn't let her in. I could just feel that the suffering of this relationship. Maybe that's melodrama, but I have been involved in a lot of melodrama as well. So. But I felt it was always there. I don't want to say that it was just I just went along and I was like, oh yeah, but yeah.
So did you then? So once you were, I guess we're talking about now what sort of like teenager A-levels kind of period of your life.
Yeah, that's right. I was about 16. Yeah.
Right. And did you go to a formal drama training? Did you go to drama school?
I did 3 years at Italia Conti.
Great.
Which was fantastic. I think it's really important to train. Well, for me, it was very important to train, and it's given me the tools, and they continue to grow. Your understanding of what those tools are and how they can help you in certain situations. The only thing I would say is that everything happens much faster in the business. You don't always get time for process in the way that you might in drama school or I don't know what the structures are here. It might be very different to theatre school, but that's what I was at theatre school. But really, I think film has taken so much from that art form and the techniques used to create characters and tell stories.
Right. So when you were, just sort of break it down a bit. So obviously when you went to drama school, you had some experience, you'd done some acting, whatever, but what was surprising about it? What changed? Did you feel, how did you expand your understanding of the craft?
Well, I think basically, what the craft can do is take you away from self-consciousness, because I think, when we're acting without knowing what we're doing, there's a lot of self-conscious. And it's not pleasant to watch, I don't think. You're not engaged in what you're doing. There's something sort of outside of yourself watching you.
Yeah.
I
think that's true. Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, in fact, one of the things that we talk about with the students a lot is
Yeah.
that, particularly when you're talking about screen acting, the camera sees everything.
Yeah.
So if you're in your head and you're not engaging with what's happening in front of you, the camera sees that. So we have to sort of, rather than say, well, there we go, we have to work on techniques and tools, I guess, as to how to. I think to cope with that. I mean, so I suppose the other side of that question really is that, were you quite self-conscious and did you overcome it? Or were you quite relaxed in front of the camera or on stage?
Yeah, I think now if I'm self-conscious, I ask myself, what is my action? What am I doing? Why don't I feel connected to what I'm doing?
Right.
And it could be bad writing, because there's a lot of it, I'm telling you. It's quite difficult, and that's part of the job, is to try and make a bad script work. But you can always break it down to actions. But I think it can be very misleading, because actions, there's small steps within actions. Like, you can't play I deceive you, but that can be your objective, if you know what I mean. What you might do is you might suggest to somebody. So that's where you break things down, and it becomes really lovely and vivid and colourful to watch people playing the little moments between their objectives to get what they want, get what they need. And on the camera, like you say, it really picks that stuff up.
Yeah.
But what you don't want to do is set it in stone. What you want to do is give yourself a platform in which you go into the space knowing you're ready for anything. And you can do all that stuff at home before. So when you turn up, the director might give you a completely different action maybe, but it's a language that you can understand and that you can work with. I'm sure you've all studied actions, have you?
Yeah, well, it depends.
Actions
Some of these are filmmakers, but the actors we have amongst us we've got a couple of sort of first years here, are just beginning to kind of get into all of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's the basic tools, is like objectives, counter objectives, all these things you can study in your own time. Even as a director, I think it's really important, if you're directing, to understand what that process is, because you might see somebody doing something and you think it's not quite right what they're doing. But rather than telling them it's not quite right, that's not going to help them. You want to tell them something that they can do. Give them an action, give them an objective. Yeah.
I recently came across results directing, I think that was the term.
Results.
Yeah. Saying, I want the scene to progress faster. I want
Yeah.
to go faster.
Faster's a big
You're
no.
in a hurry,
Yeah.
So appeal more to the character rather than how you want it to sort of play out. I guess is that, would you say you prefer a director to sort of...
Do you know what? I don't like to say, there's so many ways of doing things, I wouldn't like to say that I'm open to anything. But what we all want to do is get behind each other. I think when a director's cast something, I think the best thing to do is just get behind them. You've cast them, you've made your choice. Now get behind them like a football manager does a footballer. They might not be having a good time. You can see they're struggling. Help them. And how can you help them? Actors act. They need actions and objectives to know what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting what you say, actually, because there's a sort of the process. Because what we try and encourage here is, obviously, you're familiar with Judith Weston, but one of her big things is to sort of try and avoid result directing, which is to say you're sad or you're this, because then the actor will the temptation is to sort of wash the scene with one feeling. And then you're sort of trampling over the dramatic structure of the scene itself. I was talking to someone the other day who'd been working with actually a couple of models who were making the transition into acting, giving them some coaching. Yeah. And he said something quite interesting. He said that what the models are used to doing is playing a state.
Yeah.
So of course, for a still shot, they can look amazing. They can look like they're playing a very sincere and intense emotion. But as soon as you give them a scene, they don't know how to break out of that state or how to sort of nuance it. And he was saying that actually that's what acting is. Acting is actually the structure of an entire sequence, not just one thing or another. So the result directing model then becomes difficult, because if the director says you're sad for this scene, this is your sad scene, then you're like, yeah, but there's lots of other things happening in the scene.
Absolutely.
that I'm going to ignore or just Does that make sense? Is that
well,
clear?
I see. I mean, I was watching. I won't say what it was that I was watching. I was thinking, why aren't they having more fun with this?
Yeah.
It's like this one look, this one stance,
Right.
whatever it might be. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, there's plenty of time for that in the film. Maybe in this moment you can smile. I mean, what are you doing? But you can break it down to why I say actions, because they're the small beats towards getting what you want.
So
And that's why in there's colour. There's potential to find and discover things. And obviously it depends what the other actors are doing and what they give you and then how you respond. It's just being in an open, it's like jazz music. It's the same. You know, they practice scales and modes to then turn up in the moment, and it's like, what's the music? You know, what's going to be? You've got to come with an open mind, I think, but very prepared. If you can mix those two things together, it's great stuff.
So when you're looking at your individual pathway, so when you so you leave Italia Conti,
Yeah.
and then I mean a lot of your credits are screen credits, and so
Yeah.
obviously it sounds like you had a slightly more classical kind of theatrical training.
Yeah.
So what was the shift you had to make? What was it like doing your first screen job? Was it a big leap for you?
Well,
Did you get some help?
You do learn a lot on the job. You kind of get through. Your instinct as a person, I think, it's always there, but you do learn on the job because it's a new environment that you're going. And I think maybe as a young actor, I had a lot to prove, a lot of insecurity. I didn't know who I was deep down. I think now, as I'm approaching 50. I'm much more comfortable in my skin. I kind of feel at a better place, but that doesn't mean that good things didn't happen along the way.
Yeah.
But I think that all the insecurities, it challenges you being in front of that camera. It challenges you what people say about you, good or bad. And it can really influence how you think and feel. And that's why there's a lot of mental illness in our business that people are much more open about now. But you can pretend that you're in control when you're not.
Right. So what are the measures that you would take then to kind of compensate for that? Because if you're feeling that way, let's say
It's unconscious,
the younger you though is feeling insecure, is worrying about stuff. Did you just sort of work it through, or did you, how did you?
You learn the
tackle
hard way. I learned the hard way. It was just a question of why is this not work? Why do I feel so much anxiety about this audition? But what I did is I went back to the craft, and the people who know what they're doing, they will encourage. They will say it's ridiculous to ask somebody to get too far in their performance too quickly. So you feel like you've got to go in the room and have all this stuff ready, but you've only had a day to look at it. So you felt, I think it was an unrealistic, they ask too much, the demand sometimes too much, but we have to accept that to a certain level. We have to accept the rules of the game and the limitations that are in this industry and try and do our best to work our way through it, and work with what it is.
So what you're saying really is that the preparation is the key, so that if you've done the work, you're in a state where whatever they throw at you, which might, for good reasons, be completely unexpected, left turns, whatever. I
love the unexpected now. I want the unexpected.
Yeah.
But I think at the stage of casting, you could just ask somebody to come in and read and just maybe try a few things out. But nowadays they want full casting tapes, 3 scenes edited and given to them in perfect shape, which is, I think, unrealistic. But you have to accept. That's what you do, and you do your best to do that.
Well, let's dig into that, because I think that's obviously the industry has shifted quite a lot in the last few years.
Yeah.
And I think there was an unregulated, perhaps slightly sort of, there was a version of things where the actor didn't challenge. The actor. Well, that's not always the case. There's billions of stories of actors who do challenge and do, but certainly I think a lot of actors have struggled with knowing where the line is. When can I step in and say, actually, this isn't cool, or I'm not getting this, or I can't do that, or what you're asking me to do is, I'm thinking to now something that we've embraced at the school, which is obviously the whole the world of intimacy coordinators, and bringing people in who are there to kind of guide performers through potentially difficult scenes where emotion, physicality and other things are, in the old days, you just get on with it and do it, and we'll film it and see you later. And now it's like, well, actually, in order to achieve a state of vulnerability that you're asking for in front of the camera, we have to accept that there's a degree of vulnerability that will be taking place behind the camera, as it were. You know, the off-screen needs to be taken care of, so actors feel confident, they feel protected, all this kind of stuff. So that's one version. What I'm trying to get at, though, is that where for you, or do you, as an actor now who's had a few years' experience, do you look back then and go, right, there were moments where I actually perhaps I should have pushed back and I didn't? Or do you feel that that's not the actor's job?
I feel it is, but I think if you're comfortable in yourself, you accept it is what it is.
Right.
Meeting people that really understand the craft and how to do things properly and the nature of creativity is quite rare. In my experience, that's what I have to say, because everyone has a different story about this business and how things have gone for them. But I think it's okay. Like what I do now, for instance, if I feel it's beyond me to learn 3 scenes for them and put it on a tape, I'll just learn the one and I'll do it well. And I'll just send that. I'm not advising you to do that, but that's just what I do, because I think that's me taking control. I can take control by doing the actions and use the craft. Right. That's where my domain is. I can take control of that situation. But to be honest with you, when I go on a film now, I know we're probably only going to have 1 or 2 takes. There's no point in arguing that and pushing back, unless you really feel strongly, listen, we've got to do that again. Why not stand up for yourself there?
Yeah.
But why not just look for moments where you can be creative, where you can bring something, tell the story about your character. That might seem like a passive thing to say, but I think it's better. I think in some ways accepting the limitations of it, and if you find yourself in an ideal situation, brilliant. But if not, you still have to find a way to work and do what you do. Does that sound?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, it's you say, it depends on the job. It depends on the kind of thing. I guess if it's a huge production and everything's green screen or whatever, that's a totally different thing to an intimate indie film where the director, is, and the writers or whatever have crafted something that does perhaps allow for a bit more space for performance to come through.
Absolutely.
But do you? So I suppose this brings us to one of the things I know we were going to talk about, which is, I guess, that relationship with the director. What's your kind of optimal state? Like for you, what would, regardless of whether it happens in the industry, what do you look for in a director? What encourages you in the way when you meet a director?
I think that we all know that we're only as good as the story we're telling. So the script is everything. But no matter what director you have, actors, they'll pull something out of the bag. But if the story's not engaging, the story does so much. It gives you an energy. I think a really good director is not trying to prove anything necessarily. They accept the moment as it is. They're not pushing you around, getting anxious that then you're not getting, doing what they want. They're very aware of what's happening. You almost have to be like a guru. Yeah. Not a guru, but an enlightened being to be a director, because there's so many different things going on that you have to be aware of. But I think an understanding of what the actor's job is, like I said at the very beginning, and helping them, knowing what it is that you can do to help them get what you want. Get behind them. Your friends, your comrades, you're going on a journey together and you'll go through up and downs. And the funny thing is, you go home some evenings and you feel you haven't got what you set out to do that day, but then you look at the rushes and they're incredible. So you don't always know, but you just keep trying, you keep moving forward. You don't blame people, you don't inhibit people. I think a good director is a good human being. Right. Really? Yeah. But then, great directors have been pretty horrible human beings, so it depends what you want to do.
So good director, good human being, great director, arsehole.
Great. But great movie. Great movie. You can't take that away from them. People have methods. But if you're asking me, I think getting behind people is a better way of doing things. Yeah. Pep Guardiola, he gets good results on the he's a football manager. He gets good results and they love him. The players love him. They do anything for him. So, but I think, it really does come down to the craft and the story. So the script is everything. We've got the tools. It's a bit like scales and modes in music. That's what we've got. Jazz musicians, they know the scales and the modes. They're not questioning whether these techniques work. They work, of course they do. That's the craft. So go to the craft, because that's where we all stand. There's no hierarchy in the craft. We come together and we play. Music or drama, whatever it is. So that's where it's at. That's the power. That's where the power is, I think, for the actors and directors.
Good. Yes, please.
So how would you see an actor-director relationship if a director were to come at you and ask or give you a direction that you didn't really agree with? How would you go about that?
Well, maybe if I didn't agree with it, I would just ask him to be maybe clearer about what he's saying. Because I want to serve the director. I want to give over my power. I want to say, this guy's directing me. We want to go on a journey together. I think it's just clearer maybe in terms of what he wants. I'd ask first. There needn't be conflict, but I'm not afraid of conflict as well, because it can be like that. When you're in raw emotional states, it can get there can be a bit of friction, but so what? That can be a creative place as well. So I wouldn't be afraid of conflict, but I would need to know and be clear about what he wanted. And he'd want to be clear, I'm sure, or she would want to be clear about what she's saying.
If you're looking at, I'm slight sort of shift here, but I'm thinking about, and one of the things I think you mentioned when you originally wrote to us, obviously the pandemic came along and sort of changed quite a lot for you. What is different? I mean, if you were imagining being one of the actors here, thinking about graduating and a career ahead, what do you think has changed, and what do you think they need to be paying attention to or be aware of? We've talked about craft bit, but what other things?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think. Look, it can be tough out there. There's no doubt about it. There's no getting away from that. So I think we were discussing before we started, making films yourself, getting together, sticking together, coming up with ideas. Don't let the business get you down. It's nothing without creatives. It existed, the drama and all that existed way before the business did. It can be a numbers game. When it's working for you, brilliant. You surf it. If you get a chance, take it, But in the meantime, make things happen for yourself. Like a musician, pick up your guitar, start playing around, get your camera, go shoot things. People will tell you it's tough, but you never know what's around the corner. You never know what opportunities might come your way. You could say it is suffering, the business. COVID didn't help things. The economic state is not helping things, but entertainment will always be needed, and we've just got to be positive, I think, about how to move forward.
One of the things that we talk to our actors about is, and I'm thinking also of some of the stuff that Larry Moss does with in his work, which is he's very keen to encourage, because the story, the example he gives is like, an actor comes up to him and says, I'm not working at the moment, I'm losing my mind, sort of thing. He's like, well, what are you doing? What do you mean you're not working? Why are you not working? Did you do your monologues today? Did you do some exercises? Did you do, have you practiced? Have you warmed up your voice today? He's like, what do you mean I'm not working? He said, but you'll never work if that's not, his theory is that you're always working.
Absolutely.
And that the actor has to kind of spend a lot of, whether you're actually doing a job, you should also be concentrating on, there's so many things you could be doing, I guess, to practice, to keep in shape, all this kind of stuff. Is that work? Is that something you do? Do you engage with that?
I do. I mean, it became very unfashionable, I think, like voice work and all that kind of stuff. But I really do think it's important. I mean, it's like you're living and breathing. It's a vocation, isn't it? Like the musician. Sorry to come back to that, but it's the same thing. You can practice things. Learn your accents before the audition comes in. I mean, American accents, I think, we see a lot of really poor American accents actually on the screens, I feel. But learn accents in your spare time, especially American. Work on your body. It's not about becoming, big, strong, six pack and that. But I'm just talking about, yoga, flexibility, everything. You're living, breathing artist. It has to be, try new things out, if you can. Yeah, I agree with you. You're never not working.
Yeah.
And with the technology advancements, with all these cameras and, everybody's got a camera, everybody's got iMovie. You can make things,
Yeah. So one of the other things we talk to our actors about is how to sort of manage life as an actor generally. You know? So, and I guess what I'm referring to is the periods of time where you're not working, quotes, sort of riffing on what I've already sort of mentioned. But I think, and as I think as you alluded to earlier, there are mental health concerns within the acting community. Obviously, some actors do struggle a little bit with isolation or being out of work or not feeling like they're being useful, that kind of stuff. And how do you have any sort of personal tips for that? What do you do to kind of,
you've got to talk like anyone would say. Keep open, keep talking. But it can get you down. If you're doing really good work, really good audition tapes, or writing good scripts, or you feel you're really on your game, the business doesn't always respond to that. They don't care, and it can be really disheartening to feel you put your heart and your soul into something, but maybe it went on a casting agent's laptop and they watched it for 4 minutes, not even that, 40 seconds, and you spent a whole week doing that. Then you pile that up over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and you feel, Jesus Christ, what have you got to do to get a job in this business? You can go through times like that, and there's no getting away from it. It's tough. But you just got to keep talking to your comrades and, help each other, friends, just be around each other and, have maybe other ways of study during that time as well for alternative ways of making money. Because that's what we need. We need money to survive. And it doesn't mean you have to give up. You don't want to give up your art form, especially when it means so much to you. So maybe you do need to look at other alternative ways. It doesn't seem like a great thing to talk about, really, when you're just going into the business. But why not? You just got to be aware of this stuff.
So, obviously, as I've told you before we started, that what we offer here is a kind of more sort of not an integrated training. There's filmmaking sort of threaded through all the sort of screen acting training. Also, we offer filmmaking courses and other things besides. And I wonder, thinking back to perhaps your experience as a drama student, but also, what we're offering, and obviously you don't know what the course looks like in its sort of granular detail, but are there any things that you wish you had learnt at drama school, or that you, looking back, you think, I wish we'd spent more time on that, or even I wish, knowing what I know now, I'd taken that more seriously, those kind of things. Are there any things that sort of leap out at you?
Yeah, maybe, but I think you just learn a lot on the job.
Right.
There's only so much you can really learn, I think. You really need to get out there and it's very forgiving in that way. Well, it certainly used to be. You don't have to be perfect. Just, you learn so much just in every situation that you're in. I mean, when I was at drama college, it was a long time ago now, well over 20 years ago. So there were I would like to have learnt more about cameras and how to edit. And I think I do now feel I'd like to go into directing and writing and things, and an awareness of just the basics of camera work and how to, because really what matters is capturing performances, but there are technical things like the tools of the craft that are very important to know.
And have you directed?
I've directed a documentary.
Right.
But that's something I'm thinking of going into.
Right.
I'd like to. I feel ready. To maybe start directing.
What could you imagine? Would you be stage, screen, or?
I mean, I both. But film is what I love. I really love film.
Right.
And I love the excitement of turning up to do a scene, not knowing how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And discovering, I think, is just incredible. Collaboration is just remarkable. When true collaboration comes together, it's just mind-blowing. When, the story, the director, the actor, you discover things that where did that come from, that moment? And for, it's beautiful.
Okay, which leads me to another good question on that subject. So something we often ask people is like, what's your, if you can remember, like, what would you categorize, or what can you describe or tell us about your, perhaps your best experience on a film set, or best job, and your worst?
My worst? Oh God. Yeah, the thing is like, as an actor in my position, I never really got into a strong enough position really to get the parts that I really wanted. So you kind of have to you have to accept, this is what's on offer, I have to go with that. So there have been many of those kind of films that I've just done because I had to get paid, and you know, it was okay, but it wasn't a great creative experience.
Are there any you wish you hadn't done?
God, probably a few. But then I don't really like to look at it. You know, everything's meant to be. You learn something, you meet somebody. There's always something positive.
I suppose the question is then, what would make those I mean, yes, okay, the material is what it is, and I totally get it. You know, actors you take the work, and sometimes it's not all the scripts are going to be written by Jez Butterworth. You know. Well,
exactly.
But what would define a less satisfactory experience, do you think? If you can sort of generalise.
I think our job becomes very difficult with a poor script.
Right.
Because everybody on the film kind of expects, well, maybe it will happen when all the actors get together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because nothing is going to sort that out. So our job is a nightmare when the script is bad and the story doesn't work and there's holes in the plot and it's all over the place. And if you start sort of asking questions, you open up this can of worms, and nobody wants to know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite funny really looking back, but I think it just really, these things shouldn't be made.
Right.
You know, who's in control of this stuff? But I think really good scripts are hard to come by. Great stories, you know, how many great films have we seen? But, you know, I see a lot of good stuff. I see a lot of very good stuff that potentially just, you know, maybe wasn't brilliant. All of it wasn't good, but some of it was good. Yeah, I'd say that would be the nightmare for me is a bad script.
Right.
But you still try to make it work, but the likelihood of it, and it can happen. You can kind of find a way, maybe if you've got the time to kind of...
And do you work with the other actors? I mean, how do you get to a place where you can start fixing something? Because if you're saying it's a kind of way, if you sort of open it up with the director and then you know you're into, it's not going to get better.
I think all you can do really, like I say, when you break it down with your actions, just play that truthfully. That grounds you in what the character's doing. And that's your job. Your job was not to write the script. Your job was to play the moment that they've written. So just ground yourself in that. If you find yourself in a position where it's not great, just play as truthfully as possible what's in front of you, I think. And the same with directing. What can you do with a bad scene?
So conversely, would you say then the good experiences you've had were because the script was good?
Absolutely, yeah. The moment you read the script, it's like it does it all for you. I mean, we talk about objectives and all of that kind of stuff, but it bubbles through you. You just know what to do.
Yeah.
It just makes your job easy. Everything's flowing.
Yeah.
I'd probably say maybe there's quite a lot of film. I mean, I did an improvised film about a drug addiction, which was fantastic. But the director knew what he wanted, and the subject we spoke about a lot before we tried to improvise these scenes, and we had an idea of what we were trying to achieve.
Right. So were they improvised in a way that you would improvise it, and then was something sort of locked in for the shoot, or did you keep improvising through the
improvising.
shoot?
We just had a sort of idea.
Wow.
And that can be really exciting. But there has to be a structure that you're working towards.
Yeah.
I think that's how Mike Leigh works, isn't it?
I think so, and then takes credit for it.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. Yeah,
but I think
I've heard that.
Yeah, my understanding is that he works with the actors in an improvisatory sort of environment for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then a script is written, but it's out of those sessions that they put together a screenplay.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked in that way?
No, I haven't. No. But yeah, as I say, reading the script is when you read a good script, it kind of does it for you. With Tess of the D'Urbervilles, that was again one of those moments, and it just suited breaking it down like a Chekhov play. It suits our craft. You can break it down and it becomes really, really good fun.
So I suppose that's the question: is like, how do you know it's a good script? What for you is a good script? Like, how do you know when you're reading good material? Is it purely instinctive, or
like I say, you just feel it. You don't. It's like, you know, great things. It sort of reminds you of what you already know.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. You know, I mean, you have to trust those more. I think fine tuning those intuitive areas within yourself about what's happening, I think, is very important. You know, and you just know. It's like meeting somebody that you like. Do you have to think about it? Not really. It's just sort of, there's a flow there. You
I don't know.
why.
I've never actually met
You've
someone
never
that
actually.
I like. So I'm still looking, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Did I see another hand up? Sorry, did you put your hand up again? No. Okay. How are we doing for time? 3 minutes. Okay. So if you do want to ask a question, you have 3. Yes. Here we go. Thank you. Yes.
I'm really interested in the conversation between the director and the actor,
Yeah.
and what the best method of communication from the director to the actor is, and what language you prefer to hear, rather than sort of a micromanaging director who says, you know, I want you to say your line looking out the window, and I want you to get up. You know, is it more about asking? Is it more about trying to find it in the character?
Well, are you a director?
I'd like to be. Yeah.
You'd like to be?
Yeah.
Well, you have to find out for yourself what that language is.
Sure.
You know, you have to understand what it is that you're asking, because you understand the story, you're reading it, and you're directing it, you're editing you're the one carrying this thing. So you have to find out what it is. How do you want to communicate? Don't think about it too much. You know, learn the craft. Do you understand the craft in terms of those things? Because that will help you. That's the scales. That's the place with the language. Most actors know that.
And
You speak.
Like the freedom balance, would you prefer more freedom, or do you prefer sort of a fully mapped out kind of?
I think it's a mixture of the two. Like I said, it's jazz music. You've got to know how to play.
Sure.
You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be within the bounds of you know what key you're in. But you want freedom, totally, because otherwise you're not going to discover anything new. So I think discovery together bonds you. It's like football. You don't know how you're going to score, but you're trying to score a goal. And you're going to try and get there. But you might not always get there, so you just have to be a little bit kind of patient, really. You know, but find what it is for you, you know, as a storyteller, what it is what you'd like to say. Just don't think, I wouldn't get too in your head about it. But spending time with people is important, I think. There's not a lot of process now with filmmaking. We just sit down and have a coffee, talk, get to know each other. You know, it's like a lot can be achieved from just spending time and relaxing.
So so the flip side of that though is like, are the things that you don't like to hear from a director, like if they're saying things you're like, I wish you'd stop doing that, you know, those kind of, you know, and not a lot of directors do that. I think going back to what I was saying earlier, you know, I think a lot of the film students here get quite nervous around actors as directors because they don't have that much exposure to them, and I think there's a little bit of mystique around acting sometimes that can sort of be a bit
I know, I
confronting.
think demystifying acting and the whole process is really important, actually.
Sorry, I don't know your name, sorry.
Dom.
Dom, so for Dom's question, I guess, the other, sorry to speak for you, but it feels like you're saying, like, also, as well as what should I be doing, what should I not be doing? Are there any things that speak to you, or that you can...
I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, some actors can have a bit of a reputation. You might be dealing with a tricky person in front of you, but that's why I'm saying you have to be an enlightened being, almost. You might have to work around that person's... You know, they might be a bit difficult.
So do you think... Almost,
does that answer?
I think sort of like charisma and sort of human skills is actually one of the most prior sort of, you know, the top attributes to being a good director.
It can, but you, yeah, I think so. But as a director, you know, they've got to respect that you're directing it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to empower yourself with that. You know, you're directing it. You've got the vision. You don't have to be aggressive about it. But you know, at the end of the day, you've cast them in the film and you know what it is that you want. But you've also got, you might not have to say anything. That's the important thing as well. You might just come into the scene, they start rehearsing, and for whatever reason, there's nothing to be said. It's just working.
Is there any
But
kind
if
of-
there is problems, you need to know how to fix them, or have at least tools that might be able to fix it.
For sure. Is there any kind of like direction you'd hate though, as an actor?
Direction that I'd hate. I suppose you'd need context
Yeah.
of a scene and some sort of description. Not. I suppose. I think it is quite difficult, maybe, if you know the problem is not yours. It's not a right. You know, they're not recognising where the problem is. So maybe they're looking to you, and maybe take their frustration out on you in some kind of way. But there might be situations I have to accept that and get on with and try and do as best as I can what they're trying to communicate. So yeah, it's a challenging job. It really is.
Yes.
Have you ever had situations where you made a suggestion about the action to the director and the director refused to take your suggestion and that actually impacted your acting?
Yeah, I mean, I've had like disagreements about what the character's going through at that time, but it's all to serve the story. You know, the disagree. Like I say, don't be afraid of disagreement, but just try to not get. It's okay. Disagreement could lead to somewhere potentially interesting. Don't you think?
Mm.
It
Yeah,
can.
I think, I mean, obviously it's sort of my way or the highway attitude doesn't work.
No,
You know, there
it
has to be
doesn't.
a meeting in the middle.
If the actor's struggling, there's a reason for it, and it's simple. They're probably not engaging in the right action or objective. It's as simple as that. It really is. And if you give them the right direction, then they'll probably do exactly what you want to do. That's
Marvellous. Well, that's probably quite a good place to wrap it up, I think. You've been very generous with your time. Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.